Howdy y'all, Christi here with Little Salty Homesteader. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It is seed starting time here in North Texas, and many of our favorite summer crops actually benefit from a head start indoors before being planted outside. So I'm looking at you, tomatoes and peppers. So today I am here to talk to you guys about setting up your very own seed starting station indoors for planting your summer gardens here in North Texas. So what is needed for that indoor head start? There's a few things that you should probably consider if you're wanting to set up your own seed starting station. And then there's a few budget considerations that you need to think about as well. So on the less expensive side of things, as long as you have a south facing window and a relatively warm place to get things started, you can do a pretty good job at creating a controlled environment for starting those tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, herbs, flowers, all of those wonderful, beautiful things that you like to put out into your gardens. If you are willing to drop a few dollars, you can go as extravagant as this wonderful station I have here, somewhere in the middle, or even a temperature controlled greenhouse, depending on what your budget looks like. Now, what I'm going to be talking about today is this intermediate solution here, which includes a shelf, some grow lights, and then heat mats, which are not in the frame because they're on the floor with some seed starting trays already going on them. So as far as a shelf goes, you can see here I have a wire rack with adjustable shelves. I can kind of set them at different heights if I want to. You can also use like an old bookshelf, a plastic table like the folding kind that you can pick up at any big box store, an regular old dining table if you want to, a single shelf that's just kind of hanging out on the wall that isn't being utilized for anything else. There's a ton of different options out there. And of course, it's all going to boil down to how much money you want to spend, the supplies you already have, and what you're willing to invest in. The other necessary component is going to be grow lights. Now, you can go down to Home Depot and just get some shop lights that hang from the ceiling, as long as they have some sort of hanging apparatus and they fit on your shelf, table, whatever. That's going to work for you. Now, you do want it to be at least 5,000 to 6,500 K in terms of the brightness level. This is going to make sure that your fragile little plants get enough light in order to continue to grow. There are other options. The lights that I have here are Mars Hydro. They are on the more expensive end, but they have a bunch of little LED lights all encased in this metal housing here, and they have hooks and wire in order to hang them exactly at the height that I need to hang them from. Now, this is my 6th season using these lights without any issues at all. So while they were a hefty investment on the front end, they have paid for themselves over time because I haven't had to replace them or anything like that. Outside of the 5,000 to 6,500 K guideline, you'll also want to start with your lights 4 to 6 inches above the seedlings and adjust as the seedlings grow or show signs of yellowing or legginess. So if they're starting to yellow, you'll want to raise the lights up a bit, but if your seedlings are getting leggy, meaning they're trying to stretch themselves towards the light, you want to lower it down a bit. You'll also leave these grow lights on for 14 to 16 hours a day. So maybe LED is going to be a great option for you because they're a little bit more energy conserving and they won't jack up your electric bill quite as much as other options that might be out there like fluorescents. So as far as heat mats go, the heat mats are going to aid in germination because what they do is ensure that the soil is at a consistent temperature that little seeds like to be at in order to sprout and start growing. Some people will use the heating pads like we use for body aches or stomach cramps or what have you. but I don't necessarily like those because they don't have a way to set a specific temperature outside of low, medium, and high. And I don't know what temperature low, medium, and high actually is. So the heat mats that I like to use, I got off of Amazon. They were pretty inexpensive, maybe like $15 to $18. They have a soil probe that you stick into the soil, and it reads the temperature of the soil and kind of sends that back to the heat mat itself so that it can adjust to be whatever temperature I set my gauge at. So you're going to use the heat mat from the moment the seed hits the soil until 80 to 90% of the seeds within your seed starting tray have germinated. Once that happens, then you will immediately move them under the grow lights, which will then be on again 14 to 16 hours a day. So with the heat mat, you're going to set it to the temperature that's indicated either on the seed packet or on the website that you bought the seeds from to ensure the best germination. For many of our summer crops that we're starting indoors, the best germination happens in the range of 60 to 75 degrees. You'll also want to keep the heat mat on all hours of the day. So it is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operation to ensure consistent tips are met and that those seeds are in a happy, healthy home in order to germinate. Let's talk about some other necessary materials. Outside of the shelf, the lights, and the heat mats, you're also going to need seeds, which sounds like a big duh, but you don't want to set up all of this without having any of this. The other thing that you're going to want to consider is having your seed starting trays that have vented domes. So let me show you just a small one here. So there's so many options for these. Anything from inexpensive, like this guy right here. This is a 12-cell tray, to ultra spendy. So the most inexpensive option outside of these little guys right here is going to be reusing materials that you find around your house. I have seen a ton of people have very successful seed starting using the lettuce clamshells, the little K-cups from their coffee. They just get rid of the coffee and then add a little soil and then whatever seed they're starting. Yogurt containers, aluminum, like the 9x13 aluminum pans. They'll just kind of cover everything with saran wrap to create that humidity enclosed space. But you can also go ahead and deposit some cash. Like I said, these were from Amazon. Bootstrap Farmer provides my favorite seed starting trays. They are a little bit spendy. Again, some of them I'm in my 6th season and I don't have any issues at all with them. There hasn't been any cracking or breaking or anything like that. Vigo Garden also has their own. Greenstock Garden has their own. Most larger seed companies also sell seed starting supplies like the trays and the lids, which let's go ahead and talk about the lid for a second as well, because that's going to be super necessary. So this is the domed lid that I'm talking about, and this is the vented lid. The vented top on it. So you will put this on top of your seed starting tray in order for the soil to retain a consistent moisture level, and then you'll just kind of vent the top to help prevent any mold or mildew from growing on the top of the soil. So whenever you are ready to start your seeds, you're also going to want to have soil. Now that also sounds like a major duh, but there's so many different types out there that it can be really overwhelming trying to figure out what to get. You could get something as simple as a seed starting mix. A lot of times this is just vermiculite, coconut coir, and very little else. So it doesn't provide a whole ton of nutrients, but it does give enough for the seed to germinate. So once the seed germinates, you'll probably want to rush to get it into some more nutrient-rich soil. I like to skip that step altogether, and I just use potting soil. I use Fox Farms Ocean Forest or the regular Fox Farms potting soil, depending upon what my local HEB has in stock. It is nice and loose and fluffy, very nutrient rich, and it has been a very successful seed starting medium for me for several years now. There's many other potting soils out there. Obviously, that's going to be another personal preference thing. So just because I say this is what I use, that doesn't mean that is the only option out there. You can also make your own homemade soil blend. Now, I don't have a recipe for that because while it's something that I have experimented with in the past, I wasn't very successful with it, and it is a lot easier for my time constraints to just purchase the pre-made potting soil. But you absolutely do what works for you. Another thing that you might want to consider as your seedlings are growing and putting on lots of leaves and they're starting to show maybe a little signs of malnutrition: liquid fertilizer. Now, I have a few different ones. The most common one that I use is Neptune's Harvest fish fertilizer, excuse me. This will be utilized once the seedlings are very well established, and you will also dilute it very heavily so that the fertilizer does not burn those very tender roots. Lastly, one more thing that you're going to need for your seed starting station is going to be plant labels. Now let me grab the couple that I have to kind of show you as an example. So some seedling packets, especially from Haas Tools, will come with a plant label in them, like this one, and otherwise you'll have to kind of write your own. You can get a bulk box of plant markers from Amazon. You can get them in white or you can get multicolors, whatever personal preference. It's all up to you. The last couple of seasons I've just used plain white. Prior to that, I would try to color code my labels, like the red ones would be tomatoes, green would be peppers, so on and so forth. But it got incredibly daunting to try to keep up with, so I think I'm just going to stick with the white for now, unless the multicolored ones are less expensive, and since I go through so many, that might be a better option. I'll just have to do some price comparison and shopping around. If you really want to go the inexpensive route and you have some old mini blinds that you're not using anymore because maybe you upgraded or they broke or whatever, you can just like cut the individual slats in those mini blinds and use those as plant markers. I've seen a lot of people do that with success. The only issue is finding a marker that lasts through the summer heat here in North Texas. Now, the marker that came with these has actually worked out really well. This is a plant marker that I made last year and it's still hanging tough. So I will try to find the link to these specific labels and put it down below so you can go check them out. If you don't really have an interest in starting seeds in this fashion, but maybe you want to check out soil blocking, there are materials that you are required to have for soil blocking as well. You're going to need the larger seed starting trays. You can get the shallower depth ones. I have some of those, but you will also need the soil blockers, and they come in multiple sizes. And then you will create like a very moist, cohesive mix with your potting mix and water, and then block it out that way, and you'll just plant the seeds into each individual block. I have not done that, so I don't know any other special information outside of that as far as seed blocking goes, but there are a ton of resources out there if that is a route that you think that you want to explore. I am not sure if that's a route I'm going to take, simply because I really like the individual compartments of the seed starting trays. Like, my brain works in compartments, so I like the trays for that reason. But that is basically all of the supplies that you need. So now at this point we can kind of go over how my station is set up, and I'll show you how everything is working in terms of how I do it here in my home office here in North Texas. Okay, so again, I have the wire rack with the adjustable shelves. These are all set at different heights, and I did this intentionally so that I would spend less time adjusting the height of the lights than I would if they were all spaced evenly apart, because I can start it, I can put the seedlings on this shelf to start with, then move them to this one because there's a little bit more space, and then lastly move them to this middle one where there is the most space between the tray and the light. And you can see my onions here. These are just about to be hardened off to be planted out in my garden, so they're in kind of the last space on the grow rack here. I'll show you all of the LED lights that are on the Mars Hydro lights, so you can see there are several. And again, this is my 6th season with these, and I haven't had any issues out of them at all. So down on the floor here, this is where I have my heat mats set up, and it is directly in front of the grow rack. This is my 3rd season, I think, maybe more, doing it just like this, and I haven't had any issues. They do catch a little bit of light from the grow lights, which can help aid in germination a bit. So you can see I have 2 full seedling trays here. There's 2 there's 2 heat mats, 1 underneath each tray, and they are set. That's a little high, so I can turn that down. They're both set, and then the soil probes are inside the containers to help ensure that the soil reaches the temperature that I have set on here. Now I have different types of seed starting trays inside each container, and I'll go ahead and show you this one. So this one is going to be some cool season flowers that I started yesterday, and it is in all 6-pack containers. I actually have these labeled with painter's tape because each tray is its own crop. And I ran out of labels. I need to order some more. And then this one is some tomatoes that I started yesterday. And they're in individual 2-inch pots. And the reason that I started the tomatoes in these is because they grow so quickly. This will kind of save me some time up potting later. I'll have a little bit longer before I need to up pot before they get transplanted out into my garden. But you can see they're all labeled. There's water in the tray to make sure the soil stays moist. And then the humidity dome goes over everything to kind of make sure the water doesn't evaporate off, and it is vented to make sure that there's no mold or algae or mildew or anything that grows on top of the soil. Alright, but that is all I have for this video. Hopefully you found it informative and you're able to set up your own seedling starting station based on the information I provided here. But if you liked this video and you want to see more how-to garden content, please like, subscribe, and comment. Otherwise, until next time, go find a way to get those garden manicures. Bye!